I used to believe I had built the kind of life men dream about. Every morning, I would wake up to the soft sound of birds, the faint hum of sprinklers watering perfectly trimmed lawns, and the reassuring warmth of my wife, Mary, sleeping beside me. Our home sat in the middle of a quiet cul-de-sac, where all the houses looked like they had been pulled out of the same glossy magazine. White fences, hanging flower baskets, two-car garages, children laughing on bicycles. Everything screamed stability, comfort, and success. That I worked as an account manager for a mid-sized firm in the city, not glamorous, but respectable enough to keep us comfortable. Mary stayed home most of the time, managing the house with an elegance that made it feel like more than walls and furniture. She had a way of decorating that always impressed our guests, adding warmth in the smallest details. Candles lit in the evening, fresh flowers on the dining table, framed photos of vacations where we looked like the picture of happiness. And then, of course, there were our neighbors. If my marriage was the crown jewel of my personal life, the neighborhood was the velvet box it rested in. On one side, we had the Parkers, an older retired couple who always waved at me as I left for work. On the other side lived someone I considered more than a neighbor, Daniel. Daniel was about my age, mid-30s, athletic build, charming in a way that made people gravitate toward him. He had that easy charisma that I sometimes envied, the kind of man who could strike up a conversation with anyone and make them feel like an old friend within minutes. His wife, Claire, was quieter, almost shy compared to his exuberant personality. Together, they seemed like a balanced pair, and over time, they became our closest friends. Barbecues in the summer, football games in the fall, occasional late-night drinks by the fire pit. It felt good to have people like them next door. Sometimes I thought we were all part of an unspoken pact to uphold this image of suburban perfection. But the truth is, perfection is always an illusion. I just didn't realize how fragile mine was, how close I was to losing everything I thought I could trust. I remember the first crack in the surface, though at the time, it barely registered. It was one of those golden evenings in late spring, when the air is warm but still carries a chill if you linger outside too long. Daniel and I were grilling steaks in his backyard, beers in hand, while Mary and Claire sat together on the patio. They were laughing at something, heads leaned close, and every so often I'd glance over, smiling at how at ease Mary looked. But then, I caught a glimpse, just a fleeting one, of her eyes darting toward Daniel. Not in the casual, friendly way I'd seen 1,000 times before, but something sharper, something charged. She looked away quickly, and maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was nothing. Still, a strange sensation gripped me, something almost primal, like an animal sensing danger before it understands the shape of the predator. That I shook it off. Of course I did. Why wouldn't I? Daniel was my friend. Mary was my wife. The thought of anything crossing the line between them was absurd, insulting even. But as the night went on, I noticed subtle things. The way Mary laughed at his jokes a little louder than usual. The way his hand brushed against hers when he passed the salad bowl. How she didn't pull away immediately. Small, almost invisible gestures, but I felt each one like a needle prick under my skin. I told myself not to be paranoid. Everyone was relaxed. Everyone had been drinking. I convinced myself I was overanalyzing, that I was letting my imagination twist harmless moments into something sinister. Yet, even then, a quiet voice had begun whispering inside me, a voice I would later curse myself for ignoring. The days that followed passed, as they always did. I commuted to work, spent long hours at the office, and came home to a house that seemed unchanged. Dinner on the table, Mary smiling, the smell of her perfume lingering as she leaned in to kiss my cheek. Nothing seemed out of place, but once you've seen a crack, you can't unsee it. My eyes started catching little things. Mary taking longer than usual to get ready before heading over to Daniel and Claire's. The way she checked her phone and tilted it slightly away when I walked into the room, or the faint change in her voice when she mentioned Daniel's name, almost too casual, as if she was trying to mask something. Still, I clung to my denial. After all, wasn't that what love did? It blinded us, softened the edges of suspicion until we convinced ourselves everything was fine. That I had no idea then that I was living on borrowed time. That the life I thought was mine was already slipping away, piece by piece, into the hands of the man next door. The unease I felt that evening never truly left me. It clung to my thoughts like a shadow, slipping into moments when I least expected it. I told myself it was paranoia, but suspicion has a way of sharpening your senses, of making the ordinary appear suspicious simply because you're looking for signs. It began subtly. Mary would leave the house for errands and come back later than usual. When I asked, she always had a reason: traffic, long lines, a friend she ran into. At first, I accepted every explanation, but then I started paying attention to the details. One evening, she came home flushed, her hair slightly tousled, a faint sheen on her skin. She laughed it off when I asked if she had been running, saying she'd rushed to get groceries before the store closed. I nodded, but something about the way she avoided my eyes unsettled me. Even in small interactions, I began to notice shifts. When we'd have dinner with Daniel and Claire, Mary seemed almost radiant in his presence. Her laughter was effortless, her posture leaning toward him, her attention locked on his stories. And when Daniel spoke directly to her, there was a softness in her gaze that I couldn't ignore. Claire noticed too. I could see it in the way her smile tightened, her hand squeezing her wine glass a little too firmly. One Saturday morning, I decided to tackle some yard work. The sky was clear, the air warm with the promise of summer. As I trimmed the hedges near the fence separating our property from Daniel's, I overheard faint voices. At first, I thought nothing of it. Neighbors chatted over fences all the time. But when I recognized Mary's laughter, a chill spread through me. I leaned slightly, careful not to make noise, and caught sight of her standing closer to Daniel than I would have liked. Their voices were low, too low for me to make out the words, but I didn't need to. The intimacy was in their body language, the tilt of her head, the way his hand rested casually on the wooden fence as if marking territory. When Mary noticed me approaching, she startled, stepping back almost too quickly. She greeted me with exaggerated cheer, asking if I wanted lemonade. Daniel gave me that easy grin of his, as if nothing unusual had happened. But my gut told me otherwise. That night, lying beside her in bed, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. I wondered if she was dreaming of me or of him. Soon, it wasn't just moments in the neighborhood. Her phone became a silent battleground between my trust and my doubts. Mary had never been secretive with it before. But lately, I noticed the screen lighting up more often, her thumb swiping quickly before I could glance over. Once, when I asked who it was, she said it was just Claire asking about a recipe. Another time, she told me it was a friend from college she hadn't spoken to in years. The excuses stacked up neatly, almost too neatly, and the neatness itself felt like a lie. I tried to dismiss my suspicions, but they grew louder with every passing day. At work, I found myself distracted, staring at spreadsheets without absorbing a single number. I imagined Mary's smile directed at Daniel, her laughter filling his kitchen, her perfume lingering in his living room. These thoughts festered, poisoning the comfort of routine. One evening, after a long day, I came home earlier than usual. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Mary standing in the front yard, her phone pressed tightly to her ear. She was smiling, her voice soft in a way she rarely used with me anymore. When she noticed my car, her expression shifted instantly. She hung up quickly, waving at me as if nothing was unusual. I asked who it was. She hesitated, just for a second, before saying it was her sister. I wanted to believe her, I truly did. But something in that pause, that moment of calculation, made me feel as though the ground beneath me was starting to crumble. It wasn't until the following weekend that my suspicion began to crystallize into something more solid. Mary told me she was heading to a local boutique with Claire. I nodded, trying to hide my unease. Hours later, while I was mowing the lawn, I noticed Claire walking out of her house with a grocery bag. Alone, the sound of the mower nearly drowned out the pounding in my chest. If Claire was home, then where was Mary? For the first time, I felt the icy grip of certainty begin to close around me. The life I thought I had, the trust, the love, the unshakable foundation, wasn't as secure as I believed. Something was happening, right under my nose, and I knew it was only a matter of time before I uncovered the truth. The discovery that Mary had lied about her plans gnawed at me. For days, I replayed the scene in my head, her cheerful claim of going shopping with Claire, followed by the sight of Claire walking alone across her lawn. It was the first undeniable contradiction, the first crack too wide to ignore, but denial is stubborn. I wanted desperately to believe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe Mary had gone somewhere else after meeting Claire. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. I told myself all the comforting lies, but my chest tightened every time I thought about it. I started paying closer attention. Not obsessively at first, just quietly observing. Mary's routines, her excuses, the subtle shifts in her behavior. She had grown more protective of her phone, often taking it with her even when she stepped into the bathroom. She'd tilt the screen away whenever a notification lit up. Sometimes I caught her smiling faintly at whatever message she read, a private smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Then came the night I decided to test her. Mary said she was going to meet Claire again, this time for coffee at a cafe downtown. I nodded, masking my suspicion with a casual smile. The moment she drove off, I followed. I felt ridiculous at first, like some paranoid fool sneaking behind his wife's car. But as I kept a safe distance, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than I realized, I knew I needed to see for myself. She drove past the cafe she had mentioned without even slowing down. My stomach dropped. She continued toward the outskirts of town, eventually pulling into a quiet street where Daniel's truck was parked. I pulled over 2 blocks away, my heart slamming against my ribs. From the shadows of my car, I watched as Mary got out, glancing around nervously before walking up to his door. When it opened, Daniel stepped out. He smiled at her, not the casual grin he gave everyone else, but something softer, more intimate. And then, right there on his doorstep, he kissed her. The world seemed to collapse in on itself. My ears rang, my vision tunneled, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. It was as if everything I thought I knew, every memory, every promise, had been reduced to ashes in a single instant. That I drove away before I could do something reckless. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, my throat dry as sand. Rage and heartbreak battled inside me, each one threatening to consume the other. That night, I lay awake in bed long after Mary had returned. She slipped in quietly, thinking I was asleep. I could smell Daniel's cologne clinging faintly to her clothes, and bile rose in my throat. I wanted to confront her right then, to demand answers, to unleash all the fury building inside me. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed silent, staring into the darkness, planning my next move. In the days that followed, I became a different man. On the surface, nothing changed. I still went to work, still mowed the lawn, still smiled at neighbors. But inside, I was cold, calculating, determined to know the full extent of the betrayal. If Mary and Daniel thought they could hide this from me, they underestimated how far I was willing to go. I started checking her phone when she showered. It wasn't easy. She guarded it like a hawk, but eventually I found my chance. What I discovered confirmed everything I feared. Messages between her and Daniel, disguised under a false contact name. They weren't explicit, but the undertones were clear. Secret meetings, inside jokes, promises whispered in digital ink. Every word was a dagger, and yet I kept reading. Because pain, when laced with truth, becomes addictive. It fueled me, pushed me deeper into the shadows of their affair. That I began keeping notes, dates, times, patterns. I watched them when I could, piecing together their secret world. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was emotional, intimate. Mary wasn't just cheating on me. She was giving pieces of herself to him, pieces I thought belonged only to us. The hardest part was pretending I didn't know. Sitting across from her at dinner, watching her smile as if nothing had changed. Listening to her talk about mundane things while I knew she had kissed him only hours earlier. Every touch, every word felt like a lie. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because deep down, I realized I needed more than an outburst, more than accusations. I needed undeniable proof. Not for her, because she already knew what she was doing, but for myself. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that the man I trusted with my friendship hadn't just stolen my wife, but had desecrated the very foundation of my life. And I knew, with chilling certainty, that soon I would catch them again. This time, I would be ready. The days following my discovery were a blur of rage, exhaustion, and a strange sense of detachment. I moved through life like a ghost in my own home. Mary's laughter, her casual touches, her routine gestures of affection, they no longer brought warmth, only nausea. Every smile felt rehearsed, every word rehearsed, every moment poisoned. I told myself I would wait for the right time to confront her. I wanted control. I wanted to dictate the moment, to strip her of excuses, to watch her lies collapse under the weight of undeniable truth. But waiting is torture when betrayal festers inside you. It gnaws at your sanity until every second feels like a knife turning in your chest. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. I came home from work earlier than expected. The house was quiet, but her car was in the driveway. At first, I assumed she was inside, maybe cooking dinner or folding laundry. But as I walked in, I noticed something. Her purse was on the table, her phone gone. The faint sound of laughter drifted through the open window, not from inside but from outside, toward the back of the house. That I moved slowly, my pulse pounding in my ears, and when I reached the backyard, I froze. Mary and Daniel were there, seated far too close on the patio. Her hand rested on his knee, his fingers tracing lazy circles on her wrist. They weren't kissing, not yet, but the intimacy in their posture was enough to make my vision blur with fury. "Enjoying yourselves?" I asked, my voice cutting through the evening air like glass shattering. They both jerked back as if burned. Mary's eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. Daniel straightened, his trademark grin faltering into something tense, calculated. "David," Mary stammered, her voice brittle. We were just what?" I snapped, stepping closer. "Just sitting here, laughing like teenagers, while your husband works himself to the bone to keep this perfect little life intact. Just playing house with my wife in my backyard." Daniel held up his hands, his tone calm, too calm. "Listen, man, it's not what it looks like." Those words, the cliché of cheaters everywhere, ignited something primal in me. I lunged forward, shoving him hard enough that his chair scraped against the patio. He steadied himself quickly, his jaw tightening, but he didn't fight back. Not yet. Mary jumped between us, her hands on my chest, her voice trembling. "Stop it. Please stop." Her touch, once comforting, now felt like fire against my skin. I shoved her hands away. "How long?" I demanded, my voice low, shaking with rage. "How long have you been lying to me?" Tears welled in her eyes. She opened her mouth, closed it again, and finally whispered, "It just happened. It wasn't supposed to." The words cut deeper than any knife. It just happened, as if betrayal were some accident, as if love simply stumbled and fell into another man's arms. Daniel stepped forward, his tone firm now. "You need to calm down, David. This isn't the way to handle it." I turned on him, every muscle in my body trembling. "You don't get to tell me how to handle it. You don't get to stand in my yard, with my wife, and pretend you're the reasonable one." For a long, tense moment, none of us spoke. The air between us crackled with unspoken words, with rage and shame and fear. Finally, Mary broke the silence. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I still love you, David. I do." Her tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no comfort. Just emptiness. Because love doesn't look like this. Love doesn't meet your best friend behind your back. Love doesn't lie to your face with a smile still lingering from someone else's kiss. I took a step back, my chest heaving. "You made your choice," I said flatly. "Both of you." And with that, I turned and walked inside, slamming the door behind me. That night, I packed a bag and drove aimlessly for hours, the world outside my windshield a blur of lights and shadows. I didn't know where I was going. All I knew was that the life I thought was mine was gone, shattered in the backyard where I once believed I was safe. But even then, even after the confrontation, a question lingered like a bitter taste I couldn't wash away. Had I truly seen the full extent of their betrayal? Or was there more, still lurking beneath the surface, waiting to destroy what little remained of me? After the confrontation, the atmosphere in our home shifted into something I can only describe as frozen. We lived under the same roof, shared the same kitchen, the same bed, but it was as if invisible walls had risen between us. Conversations were reduced to necessities. Who was picking up groceries? What bills needed to be paid? When the trash should go out? The warmth, the laughter, the easy rhythm we once had. Gone. Mary tried, in her own way, to mend what she had broken. She cooked my favorite meals, left small notes on the counter, reached for my hand at night, as though muscle memory compelled her. But I couldn't respond. Every gesture felt hollow, counterfeit, drenched in the memory of Daniel's hands on her skin. One night, as we sat at the dinner table in silence, she finally spoke. "David, she said softly, not meeting my eyes. I ended it. With him. It was a mistake, and I've told him it can't happen again. Her voice cracked with sincerity, but I couldn't bring myself to believe her. You think words erase what you did? I asked, my tone flat, almost detached. She shook her head, tears pooling. No, I just want you to know. I'm trying. I want us. I studied her face, searching for truth. But trust, once shattered, doesn't return with promises. It lingers like a ghost, haunting every glance, every silence, every unexplained absence. And soon, the absences began again. Short trips to the store that stretched into hours. Girls' nights, with Claire that never seemed to align with Claire's actual schedule. I didn't even need proof anymore. My gut screamed the truth. But something inside me demanded more. Not just suspicion, not even just the kiss I had witnessed. I needed undeniable evidence, the kind that stripped away every last excuse. So I started digging deeper and I installed a small recording device beneath the driver's seat of her car, the kind you could pick up online without raising questions. It captured everything. Calls she made, conversations when she wasn't home. The first few days gave me nothing but static and mundane chatter. But then came the recording that changed everything. I sat in my car late one night, earbuds in, listening as her voice filled my ears. She was speaking softly, tenderly, the way she used to speak to me. Only it wasn't me on the other end. Daniel, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. He's watching me more closely now. A pause, then a low laugh. Yes, I told him it was over, but you know that's not true. I could never let you go. My blood ran cold. The betrayal wasn't over. It had never stopped. The tears at the dinner table, the pleas for forgiveness, the claims of ending it, they were all lies. She was lying even as she looked me in the eye, lying while reaching for my hand at night, lying while pretending to patch the holes in our marriage. I pressed my head against the steering wheel, listening as her voice continued, each word twisting deeper into my chest. When he's asleep, I think about you. Sometimes when I'm with him, I imagine it's you instead. You make me feel alive, Daniel. I don't want to lose that. I yanked the earbuds out, my hands shaking. Alive. That was what she called it, alive. As if I were death itself, a prison she needed to escape from. From that moment, something inside me hardened. The sorrow, the pleading, the desperate hope that maybe we could fix what was broken, it died. All that remained was clarity. She wasn't torn. She wasn't conflicted. She wasn't confused. She had chosen him. Again and again, she chose him. But if she thought I would stand by quietly, enduring this charade, she was wrong. I began to plan, not in a fit of rage, not with reckless impulse, but with a cold, deliberate patience. If I was going to end this, I needed to be certain. I needed to strip away every mask, every lie, until the truth was laid bare for all to see. For her, for him, for me. The quiet suburb we lived in, with its manicured lawns and polite smiles, had no idea what was brewing behind my front door. But soon, they would. Because the man they thought they knew, the husband Mary believed would swallow betrayal in silence, was gone. And in his place stood someone who would expose everything, no matter the cost. By day, I played the part of the dutiful husband and friendly neighbor. I waved at passers-by, trimmed the hedges, and smiled through conversations at barbecues, all while carrying the weight of their secret in my chest. No one suspected a thing. To the world, we were still David and Mary, the couple with the charming house and the picture-perfect marriage. But inside, I was no longer the same man. Every glance, every word, every movement was calculated. I was watching, listening, gathering. The betrayal no longer crushed me. It sharpened me, like steel hammered into a blade. Mary noticed the shift, of course. She would catch me staring at her across the table, not with anger, but with something colder, more unsettling. Sometimes she asked what I was thinking. I always answered the same way. Nothing. It was the truth in a way. Nothing. Because the part of me that had loved her unconditionally was gone. I became meticulous. I tracked her patterns, noting the days she stayed late, the hours she disappeared. I collected receipts she left lying around, cross-checked them against her stories. I even began photographing her car's mileage before and after her supposed errands, piecing together a map of her lies. The recorder in her car gave me more than I could have hoped for. Snippets of conversations, fragments of stolen intimacy, each one another nail in the coffin of our marriage. I compiled them, organized them, labeled them with dates and times. My private archive of betrayal, but it wasn't enough for me to simply know. I wanted them exposed. I wanted the masks ripped away, the illusion shattered not just for me, but for everyone who thought they knew us. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. The neighborhood was planning its annual summer block party, a cheerful event filled with laughter, children running wild, neighbors gathered over grills and folding tables. Mary loved these parties. She always took pride in playing hostess, making sure everyone had enough to eat, smiling as though we were the golden couple of the cul-de-sac. And Daniel, of course, would be there. The idea formed slowly, dangerously, until it was no longer just an idea, but a necessity. What better stage to tear off their disguises than in front of the very people they fooled? Still, I knew I couldn't act recklessly. Evidence would be my weapon. Cold, undeniable truth. So I dug deeper. One evening, after Mary had gone to bed, I slipped into the office and opened her laptop. She was careless with her passwords. I knew her patterns well enough to guess them. Within minutes, I was staring at emails she thought were hidden. Messages exchanged with Daniel, some brief, some long, all drenched in longing and secrecy. One in particular froze me. I can't wait until he's gone on his next trip. We'll have the whole weekend. Just us. Like it should be. I read it 3 times, my fists clenching tighter with each pass. They weren't just sneaking around in stolen hours. They were planning, anticipating, building a world where I no longer existed. I saved the emails, copied them to a flash drive I kept hidden. Alongside the recordings, they formed a tapestry of deceit, each thread woven with lies. The more I uncovered, the calmer I became. Strange, isn't it? The rage that once threatened to consume me now cooled into something sharper, more precise. Like a storm that finally breaks into silence before striking with lightning. At night, I would lie awake, Mary's body curled beside me, and imagine the moment. The looks on their faces when the truth unraveled in front of everyone. The neighbors' shocked gasps. The silence that would fall as the image of our perfect lives collapsed. They thought they could play me for a fool. They thought their secret was safe. But secrets are fragile things. And I was done keeping theirs. The neighborhood block party loomed closer with each passing day, and with it, my plan. Still, part of me craved one final piece of proof. Something so undeniable that even Mary couldn't twist it into an excuse. That it came to me unexpectedly. Like a cruel gift. That it was a Tuesday afternoon, and I'd left work early under the guise of a headache. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat. As I drove past the local park, I noticed Mary's car tucked away in the far corner of the lot. My stomach tightened instantly. She had told me that morning she was running errands across town. I parked 2 rows away, my pulse hammering. I scanned the park, and then I saw them. Mary and Daniel were sitting on a bench beneath the shade of an oak tree, her hand entwined with his. They weren't doing anything scandalous, not at that moment. Just sitting, talking, smiling in that private way lovers do. But the intimacy, the ease of it, was more damning than any kiss. It wasn't lust. It wasn't some impulsive fling. It was comfort, familiarity, a life they were building in stolen afternoons. I sat there for what felt like hours, watching them. At one point, Daniel brushed a strand of hair from her face, and she leaned into his hand with a tenderness I hadn't seen in years. My chest tightened, my vision blurring. That touch had once been mine. When she finally stood, adjusting her dress, Daniel pulled her close. Their lips met, slow and lingering, oblivious to the world around them. I turned away, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles whitened. I could have driven straight up to them, could have unleashed all the fury building inside me. But I didn't, because I knew this moment wasn't meant to be wasted in an explosion of rage. This moment was fueled by the time Mary returned home that evening, humming softly as if she had spent the day shopping. I had already decided. My doubts, my hesitations, the tiny remnants of love clinging stubbornly inside me. They were gone. I greeted her with a smile, calm, collected. She kissed my cheek, asked how my day had been. I told her it was fine. Inside, though, I was already elsewhere. I was planning the reveal, rehearsing the moment over and over. The block party would be my stage. And when the time came, their little secret wouldn't just collapse in private whispers. It would explode in front of everyone who mattered. I imagined it vividly. Mary's face draining of color, Daniel's confident mask cracking, the neighbors' shocked silence. No more lies, no more hiding. They thought their affair was a private fire, hidden away in dark corners. But I was about to drag it into the daylight, where the whole world could see the flames. The week leading up to the block party felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into the abyss, waiting for the right moment to leap. I moved through each day with a calm precision, careful not to reveal the storm that brewed inside me. Mary was almost cheerful again, as though my silence after the last confrontation meant I was slowly forgiving her. She hummed while cooking, decorated the house with fresh flowers, and even asked if I was excited about the party. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral, while inside I thought, more than you'll ever know. My preparation was meticulous. I spent hours organizing the recordings and emails, selecting the ones that left no room for denial. Messages where she confessed she couldn't give him up. Audio clips of her whispering his name, admitting she was lying to me. Together, they formed an unshakable case. But I didn't just want proof, I wanted impact. The kind of moment that would etch itself into the memory of every neighbor on our street. The block party would be held in the cul-de-sac, tables lined with food, music playing from speakers, children darting between games of tag. At the center, a borrowed projector and portable screen, meant for showing a slideshow of family photos and funny clips from past years. The neighborhood committee had asked me to help set it up, and I had agreed without hesitation. They had no idea what I planned to display at night. I rehearsed. Not words. Those would come naturally in the moment. I rehearsed the silence I would let hang before revealing the truth. I imagined the shift in the air, the way laughter would die down, replaced by gasps, whispers, the sound of Mary's perfect world collapsing. And Daniel, I couldn't stop picturing his face. The smug confidence, the charm that fooled everyone, wiped away in an instant. I wanted him stripped bare, his reputation in ashes, his easy grin gone forever. Still, a small part of me wrestled with doubt. Was this vengeance or justice? Would exposing them publicly free me, or would it only bind me tighter to the pain? But each time the doubt surfaced, I remembered the recordings, the emails, the park bench, the kiss on his doorstep. And the doubt vanished. 2 nights before the party, as Mary slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I realized there would be no turning back after this. Once I pressed play, once I let their words echo through the night in front of our neighbors, our marriage would be finished. Whatever mask she wore, whatever lies she clung to, they would be destroyed. And that was exactly what I wanted. By the morning of the block party, everything was ready. The flash drive containing their affair was hidden in my pocket, small and unassuming, yet powerful enough to demolish 2 lives. I watched Mary fuss over her dress in the mirror, adjusting her hair with a smile. I felt nothing but a chilling calm. She thought this night would be another celebration of community, another chance to shine as the charming hostess. She had no idea it would be the night her secret burned in front of everyone. The block party began under a golden afternoon sun, the kind that made every leaf glimmer and every smile seem genuine. Neighbors streamed into the cul-de-sac, carrying coolers, folding chairs, and platters of food. Children ran screaming between tables, their laughter bouncing off the neatly painted houses. For anyone looking in, it was a perfect summer day, the kind you see in postcards. Mary moved among our guests, her smile bright, effortless. Claire flitted around too, trying to keep her children entertained. Daniel leaned casually against the fence, beer in hand, exuding that same charm that had cost me everything. And there I was, calm, quiet, watching every gesture, every glance, every little interaction. I had rehearsed this moment countless times in my mind, but now that it was here, I could feel my heart thundering in my chest, not with fear, but with anticipation. The projector screen stood at the center of the gathering, meant to show slides of neighborhood memories. I waited until most of the crowd had gathered around, enjoying food and laughter. Then I casually slipped in the flash drive. No one suspected a thing. Let's take a moment to remember some highlights from last year, I said, my voice even, polite, as I clicked the first file. Images of picnics and parties appeared on the screen. The crowd chuckled, reminiscing. Then I hit the folder labeled private. The first audio clip played. Mary's voice, soft and intimate, admitting to Daniel that she hadn't ended things. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turned toward her, eyes widening. She froze, her smile faltering, a flush spreading across her cheeks. Daniel's confident posture stiffened. He tried to speak, but no words came. The audio continued. Voices whispered secrets that had been hidden in the shadows, confessions meant to never be heard by anyone but each other. Neighbors who had waved and chatted with them now stared in stunned silence. Some children clung to their parents, sensing the tension they didn't understand. Mary ran to the projector, trying to stop it, but I had anticipated this. I pressed play on the next clip, emails scrolling across the screen, words dripping with longing and deceit. Every excuse she had given, every lie she had told, every time she had looked me in the eye with love while betraying me, all laid bare. Tears streamed down her face, her hands trembling as she turned to Daniel. He grabbed her arm, trying to calm her, but the charm was gone. Gone with the trust they had shattered. That I watched silently as their private world collapsed in public. The neighbors murmured, whispers of disbelief spreading like wildfire. Claire's jaw dropped, the sight of her husband and best friend exposed, leaving her speechless. For the first time in months, I felt a strange lightness. Not happiness, never that, but a clarity I hadn't known since I first caught them together. The weight of lies, of betrayal, of stolen love, it was gone. Mary fell to her knees, sobbing, Daniel's hand reaching toward her in vain. I walked away from the projector, the crowd now fully focused on the unraveling spectacle. I didn't gloat, didn't shout. I didn't need to. The truth, raw and unfiltered, had spoken for me. And for the first time, I realized that even in a life where love could betray and trust could be shattered, I had reclaimed something no one could ever steal. My own power to see clearly, to act decisively, and to finally let go. The moments after the last clip played felt surreal, as if time itself had slowed. The crowd was frozen, a mixture of shock, disbelief, and quiet murmurs spreading like a current through the gathered neighbors. People exchanged glances, whispered, some shaking their heads in horror. The mask of our perfect little street had been ripped away, revealing the tangled truth beneath. Mary was still on her knees, her face buried in her hands, sobs echoing across the cul-de-sac. Daniel's confident posture had completely crumbled. His hands hung uselessly at his sides, eyes darting around, searching for a way out, for some shield against the ruin he had caused. The image of him as the charming, untouchable neighbor was gone forever. Claire, standing a few yards away, looked utterly betrayed. Her silence spoke volumes. Words would have been inadequate. She had been complicit by ignorance, a friend who had trusted a carefully woven lie. Now, like everyone else, she was forced to confront the reality of who they were. I walked through the crowd, past neighbors who stared at me with a mixture of awe and apprehension. There were no cheers, no applause, only stunned recognition that a secret had been shattered in the most public way imaginable. And yet, in that silence, I felt a clarity I hadn't known in months. Mary finally looked up, her eyes meeting mine. In them, I saw everything: guilt, shame, panic, and perhaps, just for a fleeting instant, regret. I didn't respond with anger. I didn't need to. My expression was calm, almost cold. She had been given the stage to plead, to explain, but no words could undo the betrayal. Later, when the party disbanded, the street felt different. The laughter of children had a hollow edge, the once cheerful neighbors now wary, cautious. Mary and Daniel left quietly, their heads bowed, the facade of normal life shattered. I watched them go, not with triumph, not with hatred, but with a strange sense of closure. That night, I sat alone on our porch, the summer air warm but heavy, carrying the faint scent of cut grass and spilled lemonade. For the first time in months, I breathed freely. The lies had been exposed, the deceit had been laid bare, and the control I had lost was now, in some small way, returned to me. That I thought about what it meant to forgive, whether it was possible, and realized that forgiveness wasn't necessary. What mattered was truth. Once the truth was known, the illusions could no longer manipulate me. I didn't need Mary or Daniel to acknowledge it, or even to repent. The world had seen the reality, and that was enough. I looked down the quiet street, empty now except for the scattered remnants of a party that had ended in revelation. I understood that life would go on. The neighborhood would eventually settle back into its routines. Neighbors would exchange polite waves, and children would play once more. But underneath it all, nothing would ever be quite the same. And neither would I dot for the first time in a long while. I felt something rare and sharp, the steadiness of knowing I had survived deception, that I had faced the fracture of trust head-on, and that I could step forward into a world where I, and no one else, controlled my own story. The quiet suburb glimmered in the fading light, beautiful, perfect, and yet forever changed. Just like me.